morning. You heard Matt say he was 4, I think. I was 6 when that song came out. But we did it in honor of the Rushing family. We lost someone who was very dear to us, a volunteer here named Laverne. We're sorry for their loss. We're praying for you guys, and we're thankful that we do have something to look forward to, that we have to celebrate the other side. But my name is Evan. I'm the online pastor. Justin had partner party today. So we are here in the cow tipping series. And last week, anybody remember anything he talked about? Nobody. Okay, good. We're going to go back to the start. We're in the series called Cow Tipping. We're going through, talking about sacred cows in our lives. Justin was actually my youth pastor growing up, and then he talked about lock-ins. Anybody ever been to a lock-in? Right, we showed a comedian. Okay, now we're waking up 11 o'clock. We got there, and this is what I look like. I loved a lock-in when Justin was a youth pastor. That kid, pro lock-in, the comedian last week, she talked about some stuff. That was not what we were into, but one time we did shatter a glass door. Kid slammed it, just exploded, almost got Justin fired and Chip, right? And we had a kid snap a broomstick in half and try to stab his buddy, had to get sent home. Good times. Good times. I was the youth pastor here. We never did lock-ins. We went somewhere else. We got smarter, so we figured it out. But the sacred cow of church was last week. We talked about sacred cows the last couple weeks. Today we're going to continue that. But Justin showed Barnyard, an animated movie. When I heard the series, I clearly thought about the greatest cow tipping scene in the history of cinema. And I'm going to show you, but first I need your help. So pull your phone out. Some of you are already on it, not paying attention. Good. Go ahead and pull your phone out. We got it there. We're ready to go. And we want you to scan the QR code or open the Simple Church app and let us know what you're thinking you might do for Easter. We're planning. We're excited. We're doing more services than ever, Saturday and Sunday. We're doing kids stuff on Saturday to try to encourage families to come Saturday. And we just want to get a survey, a feel. So I see some of you not pulling your phone out. Pull your phone out. Vote, please. Thank you. We need your help. You can do this for us. I believe in y'all. Scan the QR code. Go to the app. It says vote here for what Easter service you're attending. And we would love for you to just give us that feedback. And if you do, you get to see Chris Farley in the 1995 masterpiece, Tommy Boy, Cow Tipping. Watch.
Shh, she's sleeping. What you do is you put your shoulder into her and you push.
And
they fall over.
And this doesn't strike you as kind of dumb?
We're family. We're going to be doing lots of dumb stuff together. Wait till Christmas.
You keep your feet shoulder width apart. Stay between the udder and the hock. It's a 32 belly option on 2 on 2. Ready?
Holy shnikes!
Hey, get up my property!
Run for it! Run for it! I'll save you, brother!
I'm okay.
That's the only right answer when we talk about cow tipping. That's immediate what I thought of when Justin said we're doing this series. But through all of you voting, which it looks like some of you didn't, there's still time. But we're going to pull up the live results. I think we can show to see how many of you. 184. So how many people are in this room? Some of y'all didn't vote. Come on, let us know. I like the last answer we said. It's Easter, it's March. Leave us alone. We don't know. But it really does help us if you could go on there and vote. We're trying to get a feel for the people to know what's happening with Easter. And Easter is an exciting time. We love this time of year. Spring, next week's time change. Hard to believe. 2025 is flying by. And today, that's fitting because we're talking about the sacred cow of your time. Your time. And as we go through sacred cows, if they didn't mean something to us, it wouldn't be hard to tip them over, right? So we're going to go through time today. We're going to talk a little bit about it, and I hope by the end you're challenged a little bit and encouraged. But I went and pulled the best research on the internet that they can find of how the average American spends their time. So think if this applies to you or not. Let's go through it real quick. I think I have a little graph. You got NPR here, did some surveys. Working 9 hours. Anybody feel like the majority of their time is at work? Amen, right? Working the majority, the biggest chunk of your time, working, sleeping. Be honest, who got 7 hours and 39 minutes of sleep? None of you have kids. I see the people raising their hand. That's right, yeah, exactly. That's a very lofty goal. Would love to have 7 hours of sleep. Caring for children. This is where I know something's wrong because anybody who has kids, do you feel like you only spend 34 minutes a day? Nah, negative, that's exactly right. I don't know what's going on. This must be some weird average of stuff. Other, I like that, like everything else you do in 9 minutes a day, I don't know. Volunteering, that one stuck out to me. It's interesting. 7 minutes of your day on average if you volunteer 1 hour a week, 7 minutes the average time. And then education, I just like they threw it in there. It's like you listen to a podcast, you read 6 minutes of a book. I don't know what that is. But how do you spend your time? That's an average, that's some big lofty thing. But if we sat down and followed you for 24 hours, what would you say the majority of your time is spent on? Even better, if you're brave, ask your spouse if you're married, or your best friend, or your family, somebody close to you, how do they perceive you using your time? All of a sudden, it's maybe not exactly what you think, because we have this self-perception issue where we think we're one thing sometimes, but the reality is a little different. And here's the shocking data that I found. Last year, the average American spent 2.5 months on their devices. There's 12 months in a year. Y'all remember that, right? Yeah, it's been a while since we've been in school. 2.5 of your 12 months you get in time, on average, we're spending on screens. And I know what some of y'all are thinking. Those dang kids, millennials, Gen Z, it's all of them. Pull the graph, not just us. Boomers, Gen X, we're all getting worse and worse about this. I don't know where it happened, but sometime in the last decade, my mom went from, I think the internet's gonna steal my identity, to I'm gonna send 45 Instagram DMs a day. Anybody get these from your parents, right? Older generation, a little more comfortable on the internet, we're using more time. All of these things are affecting us in the world we live in 2025, and as a Christian and as a pastor, this is something for me. When I found out I got to speak today, I was like, okay, let's talk about this for a little bit. Because our time is so incredibly valuable, and we spend it on a lot of stupid stuff. I'm the online pastor here. My job's to monitor and look over and try to figure out how to do church on the internet, including social media. And I want you to be honest. Everybody else has lied in 2 services. Have you ever argued on the internet with somebody? Right? You're lying, some of you, because the average, the statistics say, especially Facebook, 70% of Facebook users admit they've argued with someone online. You don't believe me? I know you. I see it. I know what's happening. As the Simple Church, as people on there, every day swimming in these waters, I see the comments and the little things. And I found this cartoon I love. It says, "Are you coming to bed?" I said, "I can't. This is important." Someone's wrong on the internet. You got to get them right. And this is a joke. Somebody got mad because we did not have this downstairs, but I made a joke saying, if you want one of these buttons downstairs, you can go by and check one out. But somebody really wanted one, so you might need this for somebody you know. And actually, even funnier is after the last service, somebody in my neighborhood said, "I know you're talking about neighborhood groups. Did you see what somebody did?" And somebody that's my neighbor showed me a picture where they made an obscene gesture with Christmas lights in response to somebody else that made a bad post in my neighborhood right now. So that's awesome, right? But Facebook groups, anybody in next door, you're in your neighborhood group, these are just comedic gold. This is a real post from somebody in my neighborhood. If you're here today, I'm sorry, I blocked your name out. But I'm gonna read it in the voice I think that she's saying it as, and just see if you agree, if you've ever seen any of these kinds of posts. There has to be a limit on how many dogs one can own when living in a neighborhood. Our neighbors next door have 1 to 2 adult dogs and 6 to 7 little puppies that are constantly barking and always outside. I realize we're not in a homeowners association, but this has gotten ridiculous since living here for 20 years. There's no respect for anyone else. Wow, that escalated, right? There's no quiet, no concern. They're destroying our fence, and we've called what we hoped would help, but to no avail. We would never do anything to hurt them, but any advice? It sounds a little threatening to the dogs from my side of things, I'm just saying. And some of you, you're like, that's right, go get them. That's awesome, make justice for those people. And some of you are like, oh my gosh, what did my mom say? And you're somewhere probably in between on this. And if you spend much time on the internet, your personality, how you are, might lean one way or the other. But it's a lot of wasted time, especially because you never really know who you're arguing with. So this comedian that I follow, he goes and joins groups like this just for the sake of trolling people and making videos about it. He creates fake Facebook profiles and does stuff like this. Watch.
In this group in Pennsylvania and said just spoke with some county officials about getting lines painted over the snow so people can at least see what lane they're in. They said it might make next month's council meeting, but if we keep pushing for it, we can make it happen. Be safe out there. Someone responded and said, you want them to paint over snow? It's something that's being discussed, yes. As soon as the snow and ice melts, the paint will be gone. Once the snow is gone, you can see their original lines again. Exactly. And who's going to pay for this? They said it would only be a few percentage increase on people's taxes, so that way they don't have to pay out of pocket. This is ridiculous. Drive on the right side of the road and stay in your lane. Also, when the paint gets all over your tires and then your car, you'll regret this idea. The council said they'd try to match the line paint with the colors of each individual's cars, so if paint gets on your car, you won't see it. Then later I posted an announcement from the city council that I made. I said I posted earlier about my discussions with county officials to get lines painted over the snow for visibility purposes. Well, today I just received an early look at the proposal that they're working on. Super excited about this. Someone said, shouldn't they just do a better job cleaning the roads? So you want them to paint the snow and then they're going to plow. So now you need to pay a paint crew and a plow crew. I said I've spoken to several members from both crews, paint and plow. Both plow and paint are excited about the opportunity to plow and paint. Some plowers will also paint, while some painters will also plow. But not everyone who plows paints, and not everyone who paints plows. It's a fluid situation. Yes, so now they have to pay 2 crews. This is a waste of time and money and resources. People don't follow the lines on the dry roads and you think they'll notice them on snow. That's why it's important that paint is fully supported by the multiple percentage tax increase. Without paint, this project is plowed.
That is my kind of humor, and the commitment to making the fake city council is great. We waste a lot of time arguing with people on the internet, fighting about things that really aren't that big a deal. And a lot of negativity in our lives is spent uselessly. Again, I'm the online pastor. I see this. We actually, a couple weeks ago, had a post blow up for us, went viral, got re-picked up by a comedian named Shama, who has 200,000 followers on Instagram. He went and reposted it, and he kind of makes jokes about church videos, right? It's his thing. He's a Christian guy, but he's a comedian. So he roasted our boy Chuck. I asked Chuck for permission. He got Chuck here, said, can he back up a little bit from the mic? And he just goes through and sees different church things. It's funny, right? So this opened us up to a whole new audience of people. And all of a sudden, the last 2 weeks, I've been dealing with haters and trolls and people talking about Simple Church. And what's so funny is I can hide as the administrator, so it's not deleted. They still see it, but no one else does. And 2 guys have been arguing in our comments for weeks that no one is seeing except for both of them. Also a waste of your time. So follow Simple Church on Instagram if you're interested. Make sure you follow us there. We spend a lot of time on dumb stuff, but every person gets 1,440 minutes every day. And I don't know why that number just seems like too small to me. Anybody feel like some days are way longer than that? It seems like 24 hours, okay, I get that. 1,440 minutes is like, so if I spend 10 minutes doing something, that's a chunk of my day. That's something that's a waste of my time. And Rick Warren is a pastor we really admire, and he had a quote about this verse that you've probably heard before when we talk about where our treasure is, where our heart is. But Rick Warren said it this way, I think, recontextualizes it. He says, show me where you spend your time and your money, and I'll show you where your heart is. Because if we're honest, we say like, oh yeah, we love our family. Oh yeah, our most important priority is doing these things and giving back to the community and volunteering and helping, and I'm a person who gives. And then we look at our time, and all of a sudden our heart maybe doesn't match up with what we say about ourselves. Continue the quote. He says, do you want to get interested in a particular company? Buy some stock. From that moment you buy it, you'll be interested in that company, but when your money, your treasure isn't there, you'll likely never think about the company. And if you've ever done that, I have a person in my life I know that religiously checks the stock market multiple times a day. Anytime he has a chance to look at his phone, is living and dying following this, because that's where it seems like the heart is. Your treasure is what Jesus said. Thousands of years ago in the Bible, when Jesus was talking to the people following him, he was speaking to them, but he was speaking to us, and it's still relevant to our lives today. Matthew 6:21, you've probably heard this if you've been around church. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. But there's a translation of the Bible called The Message. A pastor named Eugene Peterson spent years of his life making it more understandable. If you grew up in the King James, or that was the only one near your church that you did or spoke to, and it's all these and nows and kind of just way out there, The Message is a great place to start if you're trying to read the Bible for the first time. And it's put in modern language that's easier to understand. And I think with fresh eyes, sometimes you read these things and it makes the words of Jesus feel more alive. And as a youth pastor working here, I did this a lot with students because it helps them to understand. So I'm gonna do that Matthew 6:21 in the Message translation. It's obvious, isn't it? The place where your treasure is the place you will most want to be and end up being. So where would people say you most want to be? Is it work? Is it home with your family? Is it at the bars? Is it going and chasing whatever you think it is that makes you happy? We believe one thing's about ourselves, but where we put our time and money speaks a lot louder. And it's a paradox. Jesus told us this, again, thousands of years ago. And if you went to Southwood, a paradox, just real quick, is a self-contradictory statement or scenario that challenges conventional thinking. In Matthew 16, I'm going to use this Message translation. Again, this is something you've heard if you've been in church. If you're new to church, you're checking out Simple Church, you're watching online, thank you. It means the world to us you would give us some of your time. And we want you to know that there's a God that loves you. Jesus wants the best for your life, but it's not what you probably think it is. Matthew 16. Then Jesus went on to work on his disciples. I love that. He's like, all right, guys, gather around. If you read the Bible and you know anything about the disciples, they kept getting it wrong over and over again, and he would gather them up and talk to them and coach them up again. He'd say, anyone who intends to come with me has to let me lead. You're not in the driver's seat. Carrie Underwood understands, right? I am. Don't run from suffering. Embrace it. Anybody here just loves suffering? It's like, whoo, can't wait to go home and suffer. It's awesome. It's the best. But suffering builds character and the things we really want. And God knows that about us. Follow me and I'll show you how. Because self-help is no help at all. Self-sacrifice is the way, my way, Jesus' way to finding yourself, your true self. What kind of deal is it to get everything you want but to lose yourself? What could you ever trade your soul for? And what's so convicting to me is I prepared this week. I'm not getting up here like, I got it all figured out, everybody. This guy's gonna come and preach at you at the stage and tell you this is exactly how to do your life and spend your time. But man, it's challenging. I'm like, okay, God, what am I really spending my time on? What am I following you in, and what am I trying to do things my own way? And this idea that thousands of years ago they were working through self-help. The self-help industry today is a $45 billion industry. That's with a B. So many of us are trying to make ourselves better and figure out what's wrong and what's missing in our lives. And we turn to these trendy things and try to figure it out. And I think there actually are some tools that are helpful and beneficial that can help us to be better and control our time and work on ourselves. But if it leaves out a higher power, something bigger than us, it's ultimately doomed to fail. What if you're spending your time on things that you don't really give you what you're actually looking for? The things we're chasing and pursuing, the promotion, the status, the title, the person, right? If I just find the right person, if I just find him, if I just find her, I'm gonna try the second time, and this time I'm really gonna find the right person. All of these things inside of us that we're looking for, all of them have to go back to Jesus or we're never gonna be satisfied. Mark Clark is another pastor I like, says it this way: we've tried to solve ourselves with ourselves. That's the story of the fall. We traded God for a piece of fruit. You know the story of Adam and Eve. Eve chose, Adam followed her and chose to do things their own way, to sever their relationship with God because they didn't trust him. But the fruit we really want, we call it the fruit of the Spirit. And if you grew up in church, again, you might be able to rattle them off. But the Message translation, I think, again, says it in a different way that might be something that maybe is like, okay, I've never thought of it like that. Galatians 5:22, Paul writes, what happens when we live God's way? He brings gifts into our lives, much the same way that fruit appears in an orchard. Things like affection for others. Would people say you have affection for others? If you're a Christian in here, you've been a Christian a long time, these fruits are supposed to be growing in your life, and the people around you see the fruit of how you've lived. If you're not a Christian, these are things that you probably are looking for, that you want. And a lot of the problems happen when the people who say they're being Christians don't exhibit this fruit, and non-Christians see it and be like, okay, you're not doing any of those things either. Would people say you have an affection for others? an exuberance for life. When's the last time somebody's like, you know what? That guy's exuberant. He's super happy. He's great. He's ready to be here. Life wears us down. We're tired. Things are hard. But the fruit of the Spirit we want, that God wants for us, things like the willingness to stick with things, a sense of compassion in the heart, and a conviction that basic holiness permeates things and people. The people you argue with online, the people you don't like, God says they're holy and I love them because I created them, and you're treating them like garbage. That's tough. That's hard for me. It goes on and says, we find ourselves involved in loyal commitments. When you're a Christian, when you're following Jesus, when you're walking with Jesus, you should be loyally committed, not needing to force our way in life, and able to marshal and direct our energies, our time wisely. That's tough. That's a lot harder than just saying, peace, patience, goodness, kindness. Okay, we got it, we're good. But that's what we're called to live, not just for ourselves, but for the sake of the people around us. Eugene Peterson is the guy that wrote this Message translation, spent years of his life, and I've listened to messages of his, I've followed him. There's a book that's in a long stack of books at my house I wanted to read, he wrote, and the title is just so gripping to me. He called it A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. Eugene Peterson passed away in 2018, but this book that he wrote is talking about his journey with God and trying to walk with God. And he wasn't a celebrity pastor. He wasn't flashy. And actually, really the last third of his life was when he finally got notoriety for some of the things he had written. This book, the subtitle is Discipleship in an Instant Society, and it was written over 30 years ago. So he was looking at the 90s and saying, I don't know about society, guys. It's a little too instant, a little too fast. How do you think it's gone the last 30 years, right? It's not gotten better. And man, if someone, to me, it would be such a compliment to say there was a long obedience in the same direction. Eugene Peterson passed in 2018. He finished well. There was no scandal. There was no controversy. He's somebody that followed Jesus faithfully and created this translation of the Bible that millions of people have used to help them to grow closer to God. So let's take it back to you. You might not be translating the Bible. That's fine. I'm not either. Not that smart. But are you finding what you're looking for? Bono asked it a long time ago. The question is still relevant. What are you looking for? Every time I get up and do this, I inevitably show a picture of my cute family. I have 3 daughters. There's Mallory, my wife, at the beach. Oh, right? They're great. They're the best. Oh, but you know what? Every time I show a picture, you know what somebody says? I can't believe they're so big. They're growing up so fast. Oh, I just savor it. I was like, I'm changing diapers and not sleeping and doing all these things. I'm trying to savor it, but it's not always the most fun thing in the world. If I'm being honest, it can be tough. But in doing this for 17 years I've been at Simple Church, not one time has anybody ever come up to me and be like, I wasted a lot of time on my kids. You know what? It was just, I wish I had gone and played more golf. I wish I'd spent more time on TikTok. You know what? Just go do what you want to do. Your kids will be fine. Never, ever. So I remind myself it's a daily choice, and some days I don't do it right. I fail. I admit, I know. I was like, okay, I know in my head and my heart I want to spend time with these kids that I love, but it's difficult sometimes, and they do things that bother me, and I'm not where I need to be, and I have to work on myself. But just to brag on millennials for a minute, because I feel like we get dunked on a lot, and I get the stage every couple weeks. Millennial dads, the studies and research are finding, they're actually spending 3 times more with their kids than our dads did. And, fun fact, 43% of dads admitted in 1982 they didn't ever change a diaper, and that's dropped to 40%. I change a diaper just about every day. Some of you never did in your life. And interestingly, divorce rates have fallen in America in millennials. So I'm not saying that if you had changed more diapers in the 80s, things would have worked out better. But the research says, throwing that out there. It's fascinating to me because culture changes, things change, what's accepted, what's normal. But I have never regretted spending more time with my kids. Same thing as being a youth pastor here. I was the youth pastor for about 12 years, worked with teenagers. This is the first anniversary of Simple Church. Pulled a picture. Look at that little baby-faced guy. My wife, Mallory, we weren't even engaged yet. We've been serving at Simple Church here, changed the roles to online pastor. But as a youth pastor, working with teenagers was very rarely just super easy and fun. I had the chance to choose to do middle school or high school ministry at one point, and I chose to stay working with middle schoolers because I love that age. I think it's such a critical point in their life, and some of you would rather have your fingernails ripped off than spend an hour every week with a middle schooler. And there were times it was challenging, but now, 17 years into this, I get to see the fruit of those investments and the time poured into other people, like Josh. Josh was a student when I was in middle school intern. I got to officiate his wedding in 2020, and now he's the middle school pastor here. And that is so unbelievably rewarding to me that the time I spent, a little bit of Josh's life, helped to bring this connection now. In full circle, he will be the youth pastor to my kids when they move up into middle school. I've never regretted the time spent into students. I've wished they'd made better choices, amen, right? But I know that I have done the best that I can and spent my life pouring into other people, trying to figure this out. So how about you? If you're watching online, you're here in the room today, what are you trading your soul for? All of us can be better. I'm not saying I get it perfect or right all the time, but I want each of us to really just take a minute today before we get back into the busyness and craziness of life for a gut check moment as we look at the cow of our time. Oh, my times I can do what I want, or I never get to do anything. I wish I had more time, but I just don't. I would volunteer if I had more time, or I wasn't working so hard, or you can find whatever excuse you want. But I want you to use your time wisely. And the example when I was thinking about this came to my head of that my dad was a golfer. My dad loved to play golf, was competitive, would go and do tournaments. But when I was about 4th grade, I got a set of clubs, and he started taking me with him. Here's another embarrassing middle school picture of me, just killing it today. We weren't exactly the best dressed golfers, but I had all of these memories of spending time with my dad playing golf. And I know there's times he would have rather left me at home. I was annoying. I can see that now in hindsight. I know there's time where he was showing me stuff and teaching me things patiently. But I wouldn't trade those memories for anything. And I know he wouldn't either. And now as a dad, I have the choice with my kids. I'm like, okay, am I gonna go and leave for 5 or 6 hours on Saturday at the golf course? Am I gonna try to be home and spend time with them and show up for performances and do these different things? And it's a challenge, it's a struggle. And I'm not saying those are all bad things that you're doing, but I do hope that we can all take inventory because our time matters. And God wants to use us to pour into somebody else. Somebody like Blake. Blake did the announcements if you saw it earlier. Everybody calls him Tricky as his nickname. Blake's gonna tell a little bit of his story. We'll come back of why Easter made such a difference in his life. Watch.
Justin married my wife and I before Simple Church was ever around, back when he was with a former church. And through a friend, I kind of heard about the Simple Church going to what's now the Brookshire Grocery Arena. We puddle jumped little churches around town, but just never found somewhere to fit in. Went there, was amazed at how many people were there. Just something caught us, and we looked at each other at the end of that service and said, this is it, we'll be back, you know? While I was at the South Campus, we called it, they barely even knew me, and they go, hey, there's a pastor that needs your help at the South Campus. Can you be over the logistics for it? I'm like, they barely even know me. But they saw something in me, and that lit a fire, and I took it and ran with it. Well, being part of Simple Church brought me and my wife closer together. And now my daughters really got into church where, okay, we can watch it online, Dad's a little tired, but guess who wants to come to church? And she's in the middle school group, so we get up. Yes, we might make 2 trips, but we're coming to church because if the kids are wanting to go, parents gotta go. And being part of the Simple Church, you know, volunteering is really being able to show my talents with all the sets you've seen from Christmas to different events we have. You know, I get a little selfish with my time, but putting God first in my life, man, somebody told me, he said, you'll get all that time back. And man, have I got the time back. So with this pen right here, using that to invite people to Easter service, It's in the back of your chair right now. Pick it up on the way out. They're free. We have plenty to give out. But it's just an easy way to invite somebody to this awesome service that we're about to have to bless people with Easter.
Y'all give it up for Tricky. If you've ever taken pictures with the sets, like that giant train at Christmas, that was him. He worked in the movie industry, and an invite from somebody he knew changed his life. And we're asking you for a little bit of your time, not because we want to make you feel guilty, not because we want to make you feel bad of what you do. It's like, oh, the church wants stuff from me. But every Sunday is somebody's first Sunday. You might be here for the first time. You might be watching for the first time. Thank you. It takes hundreds of volunteers to do what we want to do to make the best environment that we can. And we cannot do it without those volunteers, but at the same time, we don't want to. We want to do it with you, and we want you to be blessed because of it. Because it's a paradox. It's counterintuitive. The more you serve, the more you give your life away, all of a sudden you start to find things that you were really looking for. Easter's a great way to jump in. If you've never volunteered with us, March 30th, we'll have a big rally. We'll explain everything you need to know, get you a shirt, help you to find a place. If you've served before, sign up, join us March 30th. We'd love everyone who's here to volunteer because every Easter, there's people who have not been to church, some of them ever, some of them for a long time, and we want to make that the best experience for them that we can. And there's this churchy word called evangelism. If you've grown up in church, different churches have evangelism strategies, different ways to evangelize. I looked it up, and it comes from a Greek word, evangelizo. I don't speak Greek, I don't know. But if you're a pastor, you got to kind of quote Greek stuff to look smart. The good news, to bring good news is what evangelism really is. At its heart of it, Simple Church, we're never going to stand on street corners and yell at people with bullhorns. We're never going to go and just try to browbeat people down and tell them about Jesus. Our evangelism strategy is that we want you to invite someone you know. We want you to be a part of what God is doing in their lives, that we hear story after story where my neighbor invited me, my coworker invited me, I had not been, it changed my life, I got baptized, it changed our family, but it takes you. It takes the person God's put in your life for this time. And this little pen is one way to do it. You can grab them, take them with you, use them, drop them off. This card we've put in the back of your chair, if you have a story or a question, something you'd like help with, if you're online, it's on the Simple Church app. And we want you to go out between now and Easter, 5 or 6 weeks, and use your time to do something that we think you will never regret doing. We'll wrap up with that good news. In case you're not a Christian, you're new here, you've been hurt by the church, you're watching online. The good news, what we believe, John 3:16, one of the most famous passages in the world, wrestlers and sports teams and people write it all over stuff. But the Message translation just gives another fresh look. John 3:16, this is how much God loved the world. He gave his son, his one and only son. And this is why, so that no one need be destroyed. By believing in him, anyone can have a whole and lasting life. God didn't go to all the trouble of sending his son merely to point out an accusing finger, telling them the world how bad it was. He came to help and to put the world right again. And what we believe as a church is that people don't care what you know until they know that you care. And you have the responsibility, the opportunity to go to people we would never meet, that we won't know, that you know that you're doing life with, and show them you care because Jesus loved you first. And if you're a Christian, our commission, our commandment, our outpouring into our lives is that we would go and make disciples. And that starts with you inviting them. So between now and Easter, I want God, the Holy Spirit, if you're a Christian, to put someone on your heart that you could go and show that you care. It doesn't have to be where you go hand them this pen and you walk into the neighbor and be like, will you please come to church with me? Right? That's weird. But if it's somebody you've been talking to, somebody that brings up, I'm having a hard time in my marriage, my kids are struggling, I'm going through something difficult. Be like, hey, you know what really helps me? I go to Simple Church. Or hey, have you heard this? Or recommend something you're reading or you're going through. My wife is great at this, and something that she started as a tradition in our family a couple Christmases ago is that they make Christmas goodies and we pass them out to our neighbors, our physical, actual neighbors in the neighborhood, a couple houses every direction. And it's a little thing, it's cookies and popcorn. And now we know their names. We know the people who live around us. When Miss Webb's husband had a heart attack, she came and knocked on our door to help. When my daughter ran out in front of the street and was hit by a car, the nurse, Angela, 2 houses down, ran out to help her. And if we're honest, all of us are looking for community and a place to belong and friends and a place to go and fit in, but we're spending 2.5 months of our life pouring it into something else that really doesn't matter. What if you sacrificed some of that time and you gained a lot more? Let's pray. God, I know that somebody listening to this, it's their first time. They're not a Christian. They wouldn't consider themselves a Christian. They've been hurt by the church, God. They've been hurt by what other people have said. And I'm so thankful they chose to give us some of their time today. I pray that we would be a church, we would be a people that are loving, that are kind, that are patient, and we would be known for the problems that we solve and the way that we help people around us, not just shouting at them, not just telling them what they're doing wrong. And it's more complicated, it's messier, God, and I know every person in this room has someone that they're thinking about right now in their life that they need you, Father, they need help. My prayer would be as we walk out of this room today, as we go out, we don't yell at the waitress or the person cutting us off leaving this parking garage. We would choose to be more like you. We would check our hearts and our time, and we would try, God, to spend more of it being like you. And we thank you that you sent your son to die on a cross for us so that we could be with you forever. We love you. Amen. Thanks for being with us.